Shanti Shanti. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Tat Sat. So, we were doing in the Dvaita Viveka Prakarana, there are just there are two, three storylines we are comparing. There is one set of Upanishadic statements. Now, in the Dvaita Viveka Prakaranam, this text is trying to explain how Srishti happened. Did it happen abruptly? Was it done by somebody? Did it happen on its own? These are philosophical questions. In the previous chapter, I don't want to read it just because there's a gap of a week. I'm just trying to touch upon it. So, what the author is trying to explain with the help of certain Upanishadic statements, we have already done that 38th verse till the end of the chapter in chapter 3. You have to accept Maya, earlier he explained, and then said, this Ishvara with the Maya Sakti, he is able to create this samsara. So he gave us a hint as to how this whole cosmos evolved. Now we are doing the details about how exactly that happened. So there is one Shruti Vakya which talks about basically a repetition of what we learned in the third chapter. There's a Mayam to Prakriti Vidyan, Mayinam to Maheshwaram. This is one of the most powerful statements about cosmology, that this is Vivarta Parinamavada. This is a superimposition. This is not a material transformation of Brahman into Sansara. Sansara hasn't metamorphosed any particular primary matter, got metamorphosed into this complex cosmic reality, which a scientist would try to explain. They are trying to say, no, it's nothing like that. It's essentially with a magical power. And this magical power is not like actually a magician is standing on a stage and doing it, but it's like a principle. This is an ontological principle which makes it possible, as we were discussing in the last satsang, and there was a bit of transmission error, so I chopped it and a couple of sentences are left. We will do it again. So then from there, what he's trying to say that with name and form, he created the samsara. That is what that we had gone. Bahu Sham Evatah Prajaya iti kamatah tapas tattva asrada sarvam jagat ityaha titivihi. The Taittiriya Upanishad says here. Yeah. So there are a lot of beautiful, important ideas here. Did God actually did some physical work to create us? It's nothing like that. Look at the lines. We had gone till this particular point, and then there was a disconnection. Aham eva advitiyaha sahaya antaram anapeksha. Now God is without a second. So if you think he had a hammer, he had a gun, he had some instruments, we are talking about duality, right? There is God, and then he has some raw material, he has a few instruments. That's duality. That's not Advaita Vada. But we believe that everything was one, everything remains one. So our model of creation has to be very smart and creative to be able to explain as to how it's possible that even as Brahman doesn't undergo any material transformation in the real sense, he doesn't undergo any real transformation. In the Sankara Vedanta paradigm, he doesn't. And in fact, Upanishads point at that. There is no real material transformation of the Brahman. He remains what he was and he shall be the same. Why? Because he is free from limitations of substance, of time, and of space or location. Desha kala vastu parisheda sunyam. That we have discussed several times. We are not revisiting it now. And therefore, this Srishti story, the story about creation, is far more complex. It's not very simple. It's not everybody's game. It's only meant for people who are very inwardly oriented to be able to reflect on it and get the hang of it. What is he saying here? Without any help, without any tools, without any techniques, without any raw material, Banhe Bahu anekadasyam, I shall be many from one. Ataha Bahu bhavanartham prajayeya prakashanena purva stitehe adikyena utpadyeta ut, utpadya iyam इत्येवं रूपतः कामतः तपस्तप्त्वा सम्यग् आलोच्य यस्य ज्ञानं मयं तपः. Tapastaptva, he says. How did he create? He did strong meditation. Tapastaptva. So there are different issues that will come in. Was there any gap? Was there any issues there? No, nothing like that. As we discussed in the last satsang, when a lamp burns, the lamp is not burning because it's lacking in light, it's expressing itself. I remember my professor used to all the time say that don't ask the sun what is the region that's your brightness. Don't ask the sun what makes you so bright. That's his very nature. Similarly, the Brahman, these are imaginative narrations of what happened in creation. I want to emphasize that point, that it's a certain narrative about how creation happened. The Advaita Vedanta, non dualistic Vedanta, doesn't care a dime about this creation theory because it's not ultimately real. These stories are told to us so that we lose interest in the immediacy of our reality, in the immediate reality around us, because nothing is permanent, and our mind turns towards the ultimate truth of our existence, which is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, Suddhoham, Buddhoham. I am the luminous one. I am without any limitations. Yes, body is limited. My mind has shortfalls. My emotions have a lot of hang-ups. But I am none of these. In order to turn the mind inward, try to persuade us to discover our Swarup, our essential nature, which is truth, consciousness, and bliss. These whole discussion about Srishti is just narrated to us so that we can compare and contrast. And there are a lot of apparent contradictions between different Upanishadic statements about creation. All these are thrust out in a few slokas here. What he's saying, Ityam Rupatah Kamata Tapastapta means Samyak Alochya. He discussed with whom? He meditated on it. He reflected on it. Yamam Tapaha. How do you know? Because in the Mundaka Upanishad, Yasya Jnanamayam Tapaha is meditation. It's not like yogic exercises through pranayama. He's trying to heat up his body because he's sitting in Himalayas. Nothing of that sort. Yasya Jnanam Mayam Tapaha. It's that luminous consciousness. It's very difficult to actually describe it in words. Just imagine it, it's pure energy, pure conscious energy evolving from within, and then new realities are appearing. From that churning which is happening in that field of pure consciousness, we are using a word called tapasya to describe a certain moment in it. It is not on a time scale. It's just a conceptual tool to make sense of how certain, like we talk about Big Bang, what exactly happened, how creation came into being. So it's a moment of intense meditative churning which is happening. Tapas tattva yasya jnanamayam tapaha iti shrutehe. That's what in the Mundaka Upanishad 119 shrutehe. Prani karma nimittanvarupam idam sarvam jagat asrujat nama rupabhyam vyakurat. How did he create all this? God doesn't create anything of his own because he has no interest. He is full and final. He doesn't need anything. Then on what basis is he going to create the sansara? He's going to create the sansara on the basis of our good and bad acts. Whatever God is doing, we are attributing things to God. But ultimately, it's our which is coming back to us, whether it is environmental degradation or this whole climate change or whatever we are today, is an outcome of our individual and collective action. And that is what the Upanishads are saying. That's what the Vedas say. He's saying, Prani karma nimittanurupamidam. prani karma nimitta. The real causal factor behind how the creation looks like is our own papa punya karma. Idam sarvam jagata asrujat. He created this. What do you mean by created? Nama rupa abhyam vyakurat. Name and form. Nama is basically a particular anything, you give it a name. And I am rupaha. This is the quality of this. This is a book. What kind of book is it? It's a book on statistics. What does it cover? These are the subjects it covers. Nama and rupa. So essentially, it makes something which was fuzzy and unclear, it makes it clear with the help of name and form. Look at the whole philosophical, narration of what is creation. It's not a material process. The material process is an appearance. But the true thing is that God is essentially creating dualities at a surface level. Vastvantara sahayam antarena eva. Vastvantara sahayam antarena eva. So just imagine there is a cotton bag. The magician comes on the stage. He's holding a cotton bag in his hands. And okay, just imagine you want to get a parrot out of it. How do you materialize a parrot? Oh, he brings out a golden necklace out of it. So he got some gold because he requires some raw material, and then somebody has to, you know, create a golden necklace so he can show it. But he just materializes out of an empty cotton bag. So what is he trying to say? Vastvandara sahayam antarena eva, without having to rely on any external object other than him. Abhinna nimitta upadana karana. He doesn't have a, I'm doing it and I require some tools and materials. No, like in other religious imaginations. Mayavi eva. So God is compared to the magician. Mayavi eva swayam eva bahuda bhasate iti. Syam iti uttama purushartha. Aham Bahushyam, I shall be many. Why is he saying this? Because there is no raw material with which he is creating this whole samsara. He himself is becoming this. And that's one of the reasons why the Ramanuja school of thought will say that, yeah, these are essentially tiny aspects of that God reality which has become the samsara. And they will quote certain Upanishads. Yeah, so they will have what is called apritattva siddhi, karnavar brahma. You are all isolated particles of Brahman. You are the body of Narayana, so they will try to have it. Not a problem. They have their own way of interpretation. We are looking at the non-dual perspective here. And then what is his? Abhyakritataya stitasya swasya nama rupabhyam vyakaranam eva srishtihi iti avidiyate. This is the most powerful sentence. Look at it. Abhyak stitasya. What was there without being manifest? That means it was not visible. It was not having a name and a form. So as I was telling in the last class, what happens in the beginning of the whole creation? They're talking about a certain vacuum, and there are certain vibrations in this quantum vacuum or whatever. There were some vibrations, and these vibrations are not material vibrations as such. And slowly things are becoming obvious. Yeah. So there are so many sophisticated concepts they use, isn't it? And then this whole world, this whole diversity comes into being. So, swasya, what was there before this whole sansara came into being? Only God, right? Param Brahman. So when he says, abhyakritataya stitasya, abhyakritataya stitakaha, saha, swayameva, Brahman. He was on manifest. And then he is splitting himself into different parts and then naming himself. Swasya nama rupabhya vyakaranam eva srishtihi, giving names and forms to his own utmost, most complex, most subtle reality, giving them names and forms is in fact his creation. That is avyakrita becoming vakrita, unmanifest becoming manifest, what was unified becoming diverse. The same principle, that is what is called creation. And then Nama Rupe Vyakarvani iti Chandagya Shruti 632 iti Shrutehe iti Titirihi Tannamako Mantradashta Rishir Aha. The Taittiriya Upanishad. Why is it called Taittiriya Upanishad? Somebody might ask you. Was it written? It was compiled by, not authored. Shrutis, they are Aupurushaya, not authored by anybody. Then why do you have these words? Taittiriya, written by Titirihi Rishihi. Then he clarifies. He's saying, Iti Titirihi Tannamaku Mantra Drashta Rishihi Aha. Rishayaha Mantra Drashtaraha. They see these mantras, these rules. They just access these truths. They did not write anything on their own. So, but it's not a very traditional revelation theory that you have, say, in Christianity or in Islam. In a higher level of meditation, these truths, as Sri Aurobindo uses a word, descends on the human mind. A higher truth descends, and the ascends, and therefore it's like your focal length is so well adjusted in a microscope that you can see a very tiny bacteria. Similarly, when the mind becomes very sharp and we are able to ascend to a very high plane of resolution, then these mantras become visible. And Titiri Rishi has mentioned. Anena अस्यामपि श्रुतौ संकल्पपूर्विका एव सृष्टिः उक्ता इति न पूर्वोक्त बहुरुचा श्रुति विरोधः. And I will little touch upon this. Earlier Veda, that particular Aitiriya Upanishad mentioned that with Sankalpa he created everything. But here you are saying creation happens one by one. But then he clarifies, even though you are talking about Krama Srishti, in phases, manifestation is phases, these manifestation in phases also takes with Sankalpa, with that meditation, that churning of pure consciousness, which is called tapas taptva. Therefore, here also the signature of the Supreme Divine, Ishvara, is quite evident. Therefore, neither this Upanishad is saying on its own things are able to happen. So there is no contradiction. Then we will also realize that actually nothing gets created. These are stories to be told to make sense of it. Now, as I was telling you that we will let's quickly sum up and look at what are the 2-3 points that we sort of saw in this particular. We'll go to the next important verse, next two important verses, because here what he's trying to say essentially, in very brief, there are these two particular contradictory statements. One is that reality happened at once. The cosmic reality happened quickly at once. And the other thing is it happened phase by phase. But in both the stories, the answer is there is no contradiction. The contradiction is resolved by mentioning that there is authorship. It's contemplated and then it happens. So there is a conscious being behind all this. But this conscious being is not comparable to the stories that you read, let's say, in Islam or in Christianity. In Buddhism, you don't have these creation stories. So it's not a somebody who is transcendent sitting at the top who's creating this samsara. No. These are ontological principles trying to say how things unfolded on its own. But there is that pure consciousness at the back of it. Now, so how do you combine them? He's saying, look, when we talk about sankalpa, when you are writing a program, you're writing a seminar paper, you're building a house, how do we start? We first contemplate. So the sankalpa is the karanavastha, the causal state, preparatory state. Then krama srishti is the karyavastha, the product state, the effect state, and therefore they can be combined. So there is sankalpa and there is krama srishti. So there is absolutely no problem. And this critical philosophical point which is being made here, tapas tattva, meditation. It's like there is a field of energy. Don't look at it materially. Think about it in the Vedantic paradigm. You're talking about a conscious field of reality, a consciousness, and then there is intensification of that. And this intensification leads, there is sankalpa. Then tad aikyata bhaushyam praja eya, it looks, then it happens. Yeah. So this sankalpa, the words like looking, doing meditation, contemplation, these are in a way metaphors. These are words to basically mention or a pre-creation state of intensification of the pure consciousness, if we can. But the moment we talk like this, slowly we are beginning to sort of talk like a not like a Vedantist. Then this particular word kamataha, with desire, because janati ichhati yatate karoti. This is the phase. You know something which you want to do. So ishwarasya sarvajnatva siddhi. That is what like janmadhyasya yataha. Because all this will happen only when God has to be sarvagya and he has to be fully conscious. Prakriti or these pradhana, they cannot be creators. Why? They are jada. And somebody who will create, if somebody is going to draw out a plan, he needs to know the whole field, he needs to know the knowledge. Yeah, that is what he's saying. Bahusham aham eva ataha prajaya iti kamataha. So what is this word? It's not about physical desire, emotional desire, intention, or will, even though that is the English translation of the word kama. Here, what he's trying to say is Brahman didn't have any lack. It is Purna only, lacking nothing. Yeah? And why do you have this word kama? He desired to be many, essentially saying that Sankaracharya, as he mentions, that this is not like craving of a human being. No. Sankalpa Shakti of the Supreme Divine is self willed intensification of that consciousness. As a result, samsara comes into being. And in more easier ways to explain it, like in Kashmiri Shaivism, as Thakur Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to say, they'll use, don't ask this question. This is just a game. This is Leela. So that we understand where we stand. Yeah. As I mentioned that the lamp doesn't look for light when it's burning. So God doesn't need anything, because so what are the key things that we touched upon? First thing, creation is not mechanical. Second, it's not random. It's not happening at once, happening without any creator, without any plan, without any consciousness behind it. And it's also not purely subjective. It's not a very idealistic theory. Yeah, there is this particular Shankalpa, end of the day, there is actually appearance of a material reality. Yeah. So the secret to understanding this whole theory of creation here is that this is a very natural self-expression of that Satchidananda Swarupa, which was invisible on manifest, and it has become manifest, and there was will. That was the divine will through which it all became manifest. Now let's look at the verse number 6. Nanu Svetaswatere Mainaha Sastutvam Upakrantam. So he's saying earlier we have, that Main, Ishvara, is the creator. Mayam to Prakriti, Yat Mainam to Maheshwar. You try to know this. That is what you have mentioned. Svetasvatara Upanishad says this. So the mind, that means Ishvara, is the creator. Bahariche in the Aitiriya Upanishad, Atma Savada Upadanat Tat Pratipadyasya Maya, Mayi Avinnataya Tasya Eva Sashtutvam Pratiyate. Because that Atma Sabda is there in the Aitiriya Upanishad. Okay, he creates it. Taittiriya, then you have Taittiriya Upanishad. Etasat Atmanaha Akasha Shambhutaha, from this Ityukta Tasyeva Sashtutvam Sputam Pratiyate. Therefore, it is also very clear here. Now, Tatra Tasmad iti, there is just a minute, I have to move it a little here. What do I do? This sentence is missing here. Okay, let me look at the other source. Yeah, Tatra Tasmaditi Samadhikaranyena Brahmadhyasasya Avasyakatvepi Suddhe Tat Adhyaso no prasajyate Tathacha Suddhasya Karanatvam no uditam Syat Tasya Karanatvam Tatra Ishwaradhyasam Vina na Siddhyati Ataha Taittiriya Shrutihi Tatra Ishwaradhyasa Tatparyena Prabhutopi Bodhaitum Suddhasya Karanato Bodhikam Chandogya Shrutim Udaharati Idamiti. Now there are three, these are beautiful introduction is giving. What is the introduction? What he's trying to say? Try to look at it. He's saying that earlier, you have mentioned there is a Shvetasat that with Maya Sakti he creates. And then you had the Aitiriya Upanishad, in which there is a Sankalpa and everything is. And in Taittiriya you are saying Etasmat Atmana Akasha Sambhutaha. So where you're using what Etasmat, you are definitely referring to the Brahman. Yeah. Ityukta tasyeva sashtutam sputam pratiyate. So you will say, okay, Ishvara is creating it. But he's saying, in the lines are not missing. He's saying, however, tatra tasmaditi samanadhikaranyena brahmadhyasasya avasyakatvepi suddhe tad adhyaso na prasajyate. Adhyasa is what? In Suddha Brahma, there cannot be any superimposition of ignorance. Suddha Brahman is not Ishvara. He is not different from Ishvara. Ishvara appears as Suddha Brahman appears as Ishvara because of Adhyasa. Let's look at it like this. Let's imagine that there is a crystal. Yeah. So I have this crystal. Okay. Now, if I bring something of a red color very close to it, then it looks a little pinkish or reddish because it will reflect that particular color. So this red crystal, the red looking stone is not different. The stone is not different from this particular piece of stone, the crystal. But there is a certain adhyasa. Try to understand this. So, but in Suddha Brahman, you cannot talk about any adhyasa. Only when you have adhyasa, in Ishvara, you can talk about certain adhyasa. The pure Brahman is nirvikara, nishkala, nirakara, nirguna, isn't it? Sachidananda Swarupa. So it cannot create anything, it cannot punish anyone, it cannot enforce order. Why? Yeah, because there is no agency. So how do you make sense of it? But he's saying, in order to ensure that there is a Ishvara Adhyasa, Taittiriya Shrutihi Tatra Ishvara Adhyasa Tat Tatparyena iti Prabrita iti Bodhaitum. So in Taittiriya, it's not Suddha Brahman which is creating anything. It's actually, you have to always assume that the pure is neither a creator, is not cause or effect or anything. It's the Ishvara who is doing it. So whenever we have any Upanishadic statement, we say that from Brahman it has come. We need to all the time keep in our minds that with Maya Upadhi from Ishvara it has come. Ishvara and Brahman sometimes are used in Brahma Sutra Bhashya by Bhashyakara Shankaracharya interchangeably. He uses the word Ishvara because only with one Upadhi the Suddha Brahman appears as Ishvara, the all omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent God we are talking about in English. Ishvara, what is he? is with Maya Upadhi. So with that Maya Upadhi, Suddha Brahman is now referred to as Ishvara by us. Yeah. So the verse number 6. Idam agre sadevaset bahutvaya tadekhyata tejo avanna tejo av andajadini sasarjeti cha samagaha. So he is now shifting his attention from another these Taittiriya Upanishad, Aitiriya Upanishad, and Shvetasvatar Upanishad to Chandogya Upanishad. He's saying there is no contradiction whatsoever. You people are confused, and I will tell you, you have to look at the Chandogya Upanishad. The Ishvara and Shuddha Brahman are not two different realities. It is one unified reality with Maya Upadhi, without superimposition of magical power, that we call it Ishvara. So don't get confused. It's the same Brahman, but it becomes Ishvara with Maya Upadhi, then it. That is what he's trying to say. And he's quoting then from Upanishad, Idam agre sadeva asita, because he's explaining to his son, Idam, this particular, this Idam means what? This visible world, this visible physical cosmos. Agre means Srishtihe Prak, before Srishti. Sadeva Asit. Kevalam Sat. Suddha Astitva Asit. It was pure consciousness, without name and form, no diversity, no complexity. Bahutvaya, but in order to be diverse, in order for this creation to have this name and form, Vaha, that means that Brahman, Sat, Aikhyata, he meditated, he thought about it. And then what? The moment he thought, that became a reality. That's why he says Satya Kama, Satya Sankalpa, whatever that Parameshwar thinks, it becomes a reality. He doesn't work hard for it. Whatever he wants happens. What did he do? Tejaha Ava Arna. So what happens? First, you have fire. Now, here the story in Chandogya Upanishad is not about Panchakarana, it's Trividikarana. So, because this Vayu and Akasa, they Tat Teja Ashrijata start with fire. Tasmad Vai Tasmad Akasha Sambhutaha. So, Akasha creation, the whole Panchakarana, we have discussed in the Panchabhuta Viveka already. And here, what we are trying to do, he's saying Trividikarana of the, but these stories are not in conflict with each other. The Bhashyakar makes it clear, it's not very important. Depending on what are you looking at it. Akasha and Vayu are not visible to the eye. So, Chandogya Upanishad is talking about the gross physical universe which appears. So, start with fire, then water, and then you have Prithvi. So, what happens? Agni. First, you have the fire principle, and then you have water out of fire, and then Arna. So, you have Prithvi, and then you have these plant life and animal life. And then once you have plants and animals, what do you have? You have the animal kingdom and you have the plant kingdom. In animal kingdom, what all you have? Andazadini. Andas means what? All these birds who lay eggs, and from eggs, then they hatch it, and then a bird comes out. Swedaja. Similarly, there are certain bacteria and insects who are born out of the, body fluids. So you have, say, for example, you have lice in the head, or you have bacterial formation in the body, you have fungal formation in the body. Yeah, living beings on the body. Lots of parasites are born. That's Svedasa, born born out of sweat. And then Udvija, you have the plants out of earth. And finally, Jarayuja, we all are born out of Jara, the mammalians. So it's out of mother's womb that we have been born. You can challenge me saying that what about the birds? I mean, the chicks are coming out of the hen. Aren't they coming out of the mother's? Yeah, but she legs the egg. The process takes place outside with certain external warmth and whatever, soothing pressure, whatever. So it's like half complete, it comes out, whether you have the uterus where the baby gains the full form and feature and then comes out. So you have these four types of created beings. So you have what? Andaja out of eggs, and then you have Swetaja out of sweat, biological fluids, and then you have Udvija, you have the plants, and then finally you have the mammalians. Yeah. And then what Sasarja he creates? Iti Samagaha. Now the Chandogya Upanishad is part of the Samaveda Sakha. So Agre idam jagat sat eva asit. Sat satcha, it was true, no. It was pure consciousness only. Tad bahuttvaya aichyata. Then that Brahman wanted to be many, so it meditated on it. Tat tejaha ab anna andajadini sasarja iti samagaha ahu. That is what it's saying. Earlier, if you look at the Chandogya Upanishad 6 to 1 till 6 to 3, this discussion about Srishti is happening. So verses Sadeva Swamya Idamagra Asid Ekam Eva Advitiyam. Then there is a discussion Asadeva Swamya Idamagra Asid. So essentially, whatever was visible, what was unmanifest becomes manifest. Sa Aishyata Vahusyam Prajaya. That's what I'm saying. So, what was the challenge now? The question is in the Taittiriya Upanishad, Etasmad Atmanaha. That particular word is there. Etasmad Atmanaha. So, Atmanaha, you can say Jiva, and Etasmad is from Brahman. So, Jiva and Ishvara are actually not different from each other. The ground for the next verse we are going to go. So, he's saying here, whenever from Brahman everything is created, you have to keep in mind an intermediate stage, or intermediate reality called Ishvara, where that adhyasa is happening, Ishvara adhyasa and the Brahman, then obviously he creates. Because as Bhagavan Bhashyakara says, Brahmanaha karanatvam tatra Ishvaradhyasam bina na siddhyati. Without that Ishvaradhyasa, Brahman, Suddha Brahman cannot be cause of anything. Yeah. And therefore, all the stories are there. That means, remember, and there is absolutely no contradiction between what say Ramanujacharya would say and others say we are saying. Because actually the real Karan is the Saguna Brahman. Suddha Brahman is beyond cause and effect. But there is Ishvara Adhyasa, then the creation. The problem in the dualistic Vedantic imaginations is that they see these as a material transformation of Brahman. Brahma Parinam from Parinamavada. Yeah, or actually it is happening. The sansara is also real. Advaita Vedanta is saying this sansara is all just a very powerful projection. Buddhists say the same thing. Yeah. So, so why are we accepting all this? Because they're saying, how do you make sense of Brahman? Adhyaropa apavadabhyam nisprapancham prapanchate. How do you make sense of Brahman? You have to have certain theories, certain hypotheses, deeply look into it, reject them, and slowly move towards the original consciousness by discarding all the layers of theories and conceptualizations you have done to reach there. Yeah. And therefore, if you look at the Taittiriya Upanishad, Yatova imani bhutani jayante, yena jivanti, yasmin, then finally all of us, get pratyavishanti. That is what is the ultimate Brahman. We come out of it, we live with its support, and we get dissolved in it. So, what are the key things that take away points from this particular sixth verse is like this, that Nirvikara Shuddha Brahman cannot have Kartutva. It cannot have Kartutva. And because it cannot have Kartutva, we can attribute Kartutva to Shuddha Brahman only if we convert Brahman into Ishvara with Maya Upadhi. That is what he's trying to say. So, when Ishvara Brahman becomes Maya Upahita, then it is called Ishvara, then he can create. Because he can do Sankalpa with this Maya concept, then he can. You might ask, why are you giving us this company? We are not giving any theories. We are making sense of what is written in the Upanishads very loyally. We are just trying to interpret it and make sense of it. And Nirupadhika Brahman is not a creator. A lot of people ask this question. Those who are theistic Vedantists like the Vaishnavas and the Shaivas, you think, yeah, but your Brahman is Pangu. Only with the concept, the Kashmiri Saiva experts smile and say, do you know Advaita Vedanta? Brahman is a very helpful, a helpless idiot. He cannot do anything. He's like a Pangu. He's like a eunuch, cannot give birth to anything. It needs Maya Shakti, then it can. But Lord Shiva doesn't need anything. Why? The Prakash and Vimarsha Shakti is part of that unified reality called Shiva and Shakti. It's just one unified reality. These are just two aspects of one unified reality. And then why God creates? He's saying that is Swatantra Shakti. Who the hell are you to ask this question? That is his Swatantra Shakti. He doesn't any such question at all. So they are not answering the question. They are bypassing it. Advaita Vedanta, Shankarahasya, is seeking to answer that question, brings in the concept of Maya. But these are certain uncomfortable uh, zones of debate in all schools of thought. We have to accept it as we are moving forward. Tasyeva sankalpa pravya srishti natu nirupadikasya suddhasya. And then what? So that sat thought, when you say that sat is not nirupadika suddha Brahman, but it's Ishvara eva. And then you can say karanatva of Brahman. Karanatva of the Shuddha Brahma is possible with Maya Upadhi. Yeah, that is how we are saying. Now, let's look at the actual verse. Idamagre sadeva asid bahutvaya tadekhyata tejo vannam chejo nandajadini sasarjeti chasamagaha idam paridrishyamanam sarvam jagat agre srishte prak. Agre means what? Srishte prak, before creation. Sad eva advitiyam suddham. Sad eva. What do you mean by eva? Only sad. That means Shuddha Brahman. There is no second. There is no one else. It's pure consciousness. And what do they say this? Sad eva advitiyam suddham. Sad vastu matram eva asid. That means it was itself. So how do you make sense of it in everyday life? So you think about a guy who goes to the college. So what's your friend doing? He's got a job. And then after 5 years, you meet him. He has two children. He has a car. He has a house. He looks a little older. His behavior changed. Why? And he has a wife in his life. In the beginning, he was very playful and he used to move around and buy books, go on a holiday whenever he wanted. But once marriage, no, because he is not thinking as I, he's thinking as we. Brahman, Suddha Brahman, Sad Eva Asid. He was not married. He was single, a bachelor. No, just joking. So the Brahman was without any attributes, without that Maya Upadhi. But then what happens? Tada, Sadavastu. That Sadavastu means that pure Brahman. Bahutvaya, in order for, he wanted to be many. How can the pure be many? It remains one. Bahutvaya, here we have to make sense of it like this, that in order for this diverse, complex sansara to emerge, there's a rationale for this. Anekadha nama rupena bhavanaya. Look at the beautiful Vedantic language. Anekadha, manifold. Nama rupena. One reality assumes a lot of names and forms. Anekadha nama rupena. Manifold with the help of names and forms. Bhavanaya. This Srishti, this Bhavana Kriya is only attribution of names and forms. Now, beautiful example would be that you hired, just imagine that you are going to a particular village to train school boys. You are a social animator or you're a social mobilizer. So you go and you pick up 20, 30 boys. Yeah. And then what? You're just giving them names. But they are nothing. You're just giving some names. And then there is a team, then there is a structure, and they are now behaving differently after a few days. Here it's even much more subtle because he's not bringing some boys from anywhere. He is becoming many. particular field of energy is now getting bifurcated, trifurcated, multiplicated, multiples. It's appearing in multiples, and each part is assuming a name and a form, a name and some qualities, certain attributes. Bhavanaya Aikyata, Alochanamasha, it meditated on it. Alochanam, Alocho, Alochana Anantaram. After meditating, after doing Alochana, Tejo, Abha, Arna, Andajadini, fire, then water. Then instead of, he's just bypassing the word earth, because then Arna symbolizes that, because you cannot have Arna without Prithvi. Then Andajadini, different living beings appear. Adi Sabdena, Jarayuja, Svedajani, Grihyante. As I mentioned, that you have Udvija, Jarayuja, Svedaja, in addition to Andaja. Sasarja Srishtavan, he creates. Iti Samaga Ahu. Somya idamagra asiditi Chandogya Upanishad 6:1. Sruto iti shesaha. This is what is mentioned in that Shruti text. Evam cha etada ekavakyatvaya. What is ekavakyata? This is a beautiful concept. Internal coherence is called ekavakyata. In philosophy, there are two theories about truth. One is called correspondence theory of truth. The other one is coherence theory of truth. What is correspondence theory of truth? So you have a truth proposition and there is a reality. This truth proposition is about this reality. This palm has 5 fingers. This is a truth proposition. This truth proposition now rightly reflects the reality that a hand has 5 fingers. This is correspondence theory. When you are talking about some reality which may or may not be physically verifiable, how do you say this theory is better than another theory? You try to look at the theory whether there are any internal contradictions. So it has to be internally coherent, logically congruent, then that is a truth. You can accept it, even though there is no correspondence. That is called coherent theory of truth. Now, in the Mimamsa Darshana, there is something called Bhakya Bheda Dosha and there is something called Ekavakyata. Ekavakya doesn't mean one sentence. Ekartha bodhaka vakya. Ek artha bodhaka. So they might write actually 20 sentences. It will be considered to be one statement. Because ekartha, what is the intention of these jumble of words, a set of words which are arranged in a certain way? What are they conveying? If they're conveying one particular thing, that is called ekavakya. And what does it have? What qualities it has? It has ekavakyata. If you have 4 or 5 sentences, or you have a sentence or a statement, and the statement in one half of the statement says that you have to do this karma, another half of the statement says you should do that karma, are they ekartha bodhaka? No, they're contradicting themselves. So there is ekavakyata hani. That means the principle of internal coherence is ruptured here. It's very beautiful. Nobody talks about R in the Western philosophy books. And now, of course, the smart ones were talking about global philosophy, but even in India, those who are teaching philosophy or studying philosophy, they study problems of interpretation. They look at the European thinkers. They don't look at our Mimamsa philosophy. They had a very sophisticated theory about language and sophisticated theory of making sense of the truth. The Bible studies, they had hermeneutics, and then the Indian scholars borrowed it. But now there is a kind of awakening to look back into our own intellectual traditions. A lot of the Westerners knew about it, by the way. So, therefore, he's saying, Chaitya Sritehe, okay, Tasmaditi. Therefore, there will be some kind of a Bhakya Bheda Dosha. In order to re-establish Ekavakyata, internal congruence, coherence, Etada Ekavakyatvaya Satyam Jnanam iti Utakrantasyapi Shuddhasya Tasmaditi Panchamya Shritahetutva Upadanaya uktah cha ukta ishwaradhyasa api avasyam swikarya iti Taittiriya Shrutehe parasparadhyase tatparyamiti spashtam. So he's saying, look here, there is no Bhakya Veda, there is no rupture of the internal coherence principle. The Suddha Brahman actually is beyond cause and effect. However, whenever we are trying to make sense of it, we are trying to attribute causality to Brahman, we are actually attributing causality to Ishvara. And that Ishvara is with that superimposition of Maya Upadhi, that magical power. Therefore, he's saying that is the intention of it. Sacha Ishwaradhyasa Upakrantasya Sataha Utaratra Bhakshymana Ikshanadehe Upapadanaya iti atrapi Angikrita iti bodhabhyam. So, therefore, whenever you are talking about Sat Aihyata, that pure Brahman meditated, pure Brahman cannot meditate. There is no agency. Pure consciousness is pure consciousness. You have to think about subject object dichotomy in some sense. Yeah, that's possible if you make him Ishvara with Maya Upati. Then he gets that elbow room. Yeah. Therefore, even when the Shruti at a surface level appears to refer to Suddha Brahman, you have to presume Ishvara Adhyasa, and you need to know at that point, like Atma word can mean anything in Vedanta. It can mean body, it can mean Antakarana, it could mean Jiva, it could mean, Virat, depends on where that word is used. You have to look at the contextuality. Then you will drive the right meaning, otherwise we are going to miss the bus. Therefore, he's saying etena yatova imani bhutani taitriya shruti iti ityadina uktam lakshanam ishwarasya eva. Then, Ishwara is eva upapaddhate. I think Pa is missing. Natu suddhasya iti sangavi parihrita bhavati. Therefore, this particular attribution of agency, whatever you see anywhere, this absolutely is not exactly about pure Brahman, but about that qualified Brahman who is Ishvara. Nanu. Suddha Ishwarayor Tadatmya Adhyaso Bahusuti Sammataha. Prag Ukta Disha. Okay, I follow what you're saying. Suddha Brahman and Ishvara. Of these two, Suddha Ishwarayoho Tadatmya Adhyaso. So there is a Adhyasa. The Suddha Brahman appears as Ishvara because of Maya Upadhi. Okay, granted. And there are different Upanishads which mention about it. Iti pratiyate. Taittiriye etasmad atmanaha iti anena atmatvena pratiyamanasya jivasya. So you say Brahman and then he is equated with the Jiva. Atmanaha etasmad atmanaha akasha sambhutaha. Jivasya etas sabda upada ishwarasya. Etat word refers to Ishvara. Atmana, of the Atman, that means Jiva. Cha upavannita jiveshwara paraswara adhyaso na srutyandare pratiyate iti asankam parihartum tad adhyasa sporakam shrutim udaharati vispulingeti. The second level of doubt which might emerge in the mind is, okay, I grant you this, but where did you get? Because etasvad atmanaha akasha sambhutaha. In that particular Upanishadic interpretation, you want to say Suddha Brahman and Ishvara Paraswara Adhyasa, we are saying, okay, granted. But Jiva and Ishvara are one. Where did you get this? Other Upanishads are not mentioning it. So he has to now quote another Upanishad to also show Jiva Brahmaiva Naparaha. Brahma Satya Jagana Mithya. Jiva Brahmaiva Naparaha. That is what Bhagavan Shankaracharya says. Brahma Satya Jagana Mithya. This whole material cosmology that we are talking about is just a superimposition. This is how it appears, not absolutely real. Yeah, phenomenal real. And the Jiva, we are limited human beings, deplorable creatures on earth, but inside we have pure consciousness, and this pure consciousness is no different from this grand pure consciousness. you are referring to as Brahman, which encompasses not just the solar system, which encompasses multiverses. Even then, that consciousness has no end, and consciousness is not different from that. So we are actually that consciousness trapped in a limited edition that we look at ourselves as limited and helpless and getting old and having diseases and all that. Because of tadatmya with body and mind, Shorupa is different. That is explaining in the verse number 7. यथा वह्निर् जायन्ते क्षरतस्तथा विविधांचिज्जडा भावा इत्याथर्वणिकी श्रुतिः. Now, a beautiful metaphoric imagination. Just look at it. You have a bonfire, and then you have tiny fire particles emanating from that flame and going in all directions. In case of a forest fire, that happens. Yatha banne jayante. This example is that bonfire, the forest fire. Yeah. Or you have in the winter, people set fire, some dry woods are there, and there's a lot of inactivity, and tiny particles of fire is going all around. Same way, Akhyarataha tatha, that Brahman which is Akshara, from that ultimate reality, this whole cosmos is created. So you're talking about only human beings. He has created us. I agree. No, no, it's not only you who has he has created. Vividas chit jada bhava. Chit jada. Living and non-living. Everything, all of us have come out of that ultimate reality. So we are just in, like in energy fields, we have different phases and different characteristics. Similarly, in terms of our appearance, in terms of the attributes and the qualities, whatever we have, we might be tempted to differentiate the living from the non-living, the plant for the animals, the birds from the animals, the human from the animal. Fine, no problem. But the source of all of us, whether we are living or dead, whether we are in plant life or in animal life or bird life, whatever, our source is one. All of us are just one reality. Iti Atharvanaki Shriti. That is the Mundaka Upanishad, the second Mundaka, the first verse. And we will elaborate on it tomorrow because you just hit that timeline. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Dachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om Tat Sat. So